Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Game 2 of the NBA Finals is in the books. OKC walked out with a win before they go to Indiana. Baraheni and I are here to break it down, and Andrew and Dave were in the building. Good morning, S. It's been a minute. How are you?
Good morning. Good to see you, Zena.
Good to see you. I loved all the content that came out of OKC. Happy that you guys were able to be on the ground for the game 1 upset. But things got a little bit back to normal, at least for OKC's fans on that side. 123-107, the final score out in OKC. And by the way, I don't know if you guys noticed, I wasn't with the team out in OKC. I very much miss them. But if you haven't seen any of their content, go to YouTube. There's going to be a lot of stuff up there. Give us a follow, subscribe there. And also, if you're hearing our voices, you like the way they sound on podcasts, give us a 5-star rating. We like that. We like that. Okay, back to this game. Now, after that upset, I guess you could call it an upset, 111-110, Indiana, Tyrese Haliburton holding his neck. It felt as if the pressure was on for OKC. And as the way this game started, you could tell they were feeling the pressure. OKC came out trying to really force a lot of things and ended up being a little bit sloppy with the ball in the first quarter, but they eventually cleaned that up. But what'd you make of the way that they came out and their focus on trying to beat Indiana from tip?
Yeah, they felt a little tight. It was the first time in a series, at least that I can remember, that OKC actually ended up having more turnovers than their opponent, at least to start the game. That was not the outcome by the end of it. But for that first half, it just felt like they were a little bit timid. They obviously went with the same starting lineup that they had in game 1 with Case and Wallace starting. And I think that was a fine approach. I understand why they went small. But they actually ended up playing a little bit bigger tonight, Zena.
Yes.
That is the clear thing for me that jumped out. Chet Holmgren, 27 minutes. He played more than he did in game 1. Isaiah Hartenstein, 22 minutes. He only played 17 in game 1. They played Aaron Wiggins more, who was awesome. I mean, their bench in general was great. Even Kenrich Williams getting like 7 minutes after playing just 1 in game 1. So size, clearly an important factor here for OKC, even though they still, quote unquote, started small.
You saw Holmgren and Hartenstein cooking for each other. The high-low was going. But more importantly, the way that they were used in those high ball picks, it allowed, whether it was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Case and Wallace, Isaiah Joe, Wiggins, whoever wanted to come off those screens, Indiana could not guard them. It was as if Obi Toppin, Turner, whoever was in drop, but not deep enough that it made sense for their guard to recover. But they also weren't up enough in order to be able to help as the ball handler was coming off the screen. Yeah. And they just ended up riding the hips all the way into the paint. And as you call this out, the paint points were huge. In the first game, OKC did win the paint point battle. But this game, it felt like they dictated the pace of the game because of just how easily they were getting to the rack.
Yeah, they did. And, the other thing is, like, what do paint touches and paint points create more than anything? It's wide open threes, right? And good looks from 3. You can drive, you can kick. And so tonight it was OKC that was knocking down their shots. They knocked down 38% of their threes in this one. Tonight, Indiana only shot 35% from 3 compared to in game 1, they shot 46%. And you think back to how they made that awesome run in game 1 at the end of the, basically in the fourth quarter. It was Andrew Nembhard getting downhill, kick out, Obi Toppin 3, kick out, Miles Turner 3, kick out. And so that was that was the success for Indiana, especially in the first half. That did not turn out to be the case tonight. I think it was Haliburton, he was a little timid. I don't know how you felt about this, but especially for the first, I'd say 30 minutes of this game, it felt like he was really struggling to get past OKC's defenders and get a paint touch. He had 2 paint buckets tonight, but for the most part, it did feel like he just couldn't get downhill frequently. And that led to some strugglesome offense for Indiana, where it's like, all right, who's going to help us get some easy shots? Because it wasn't Haliburton doing so. He obviously turned it up in the fourth quarter, but the game was basically done by then.
Exactly. Tyrese Haliburton had 12 points of his 17 in the fourth quarter. And it was like, but this has almost been the story of Tyrese Haliburton. He hasn't, even last game when he hit that unbelievable clutch shot to put them up one.
Yeah, didn't have a crazy game, right?
Didn't have a crazy game. It wasn't until the last bit that he was able to show up. But let's go on the opposite side of the ball, who showed up the entire game, except for that first quarter again with those turnovers. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander ends up with 34 points. But you look at the way that OKC won this game, and this is also indicative of how Shai Gilgeous-Alexander played this game, made 40 shots and had 25 assists. Mm-hmm. In comparison to Indiana that had 37 shots, made 37 shots, and had 27 assists. So even though they won that ratio, it was a lot more ISO ball, a lot more coming off the pick and roll, going straight into the paint, getting what they want. And sprinkled here and there were those kick out threes. Shai Gilgeous, I felt as if the defense that was set up tonight for Indiana, this was his meal. This was his bread and butter. This is exactly what he wanted. How is Indiana going to counter that? You cannot let SGA cook for an MVP type of night, this being his 13th 30-point game in the playoffs, the most since Giannis, since 2021.
Yeah, and 72 points through the first two games in his finals debut. That is the most since Allen Iverson in 2001. So, in terms of scoring, he is getting whatever he wants against Indiana's defense. And I think a part of that is it's weirdly by design from the Pacers. Obviously, you don't want to let just the MVP of the league go off. But it's either, I think Indiana, at least in game one, was like, all right, we are going to allow for Shai to go and get his shots up. He took 30 shots, right? Struggle from the mid-range area compared to tonight where he was pretty effective. In game two, though, the other guys were also hitting their shots. So you kind of have to pick your poison. It's like, all right, are we going to just allow the superstar, the guy, to be the guy to kill us tonight? Or is it going to be the stars? Tonight, it was both of them from OKC because obviously, like we mentioned, Caruso and Aaron Wiggins were just massive in this game, combined for 38 points, knocked down 9 of 16 from three. That's just huge off of the bench. Guys who are knocking down shots, who are able to give you that extra boost offensively. And, we've talked about this a bunch on the podcast, but like the depth that OKC has to be able to go to those options when other guys aren't necessarily knocking down their shots. That combination with the way Shai was effectively getting downhill, it was just a recipe for disaster for Indy tonight.
Yeah, I feel like I hope Dave and Andrew are going to go more into particularly Caruso, just being so much more aggressive to the ball, not letting his game only be represented by the defense that he provides, obviously, but just being way more aggressive. So we'll let them kind of go into it. But I got to ask about this Indiana side, because Tyrese Haliburton being a non-factor until the fourth quarter is not okay. Aaron Nesmith, even 14 points, 5 of 12 from the floor. Andrew Nembhard, 11 points total, 4 of 8 from the floor. Pretty efficient with the shots he took, but not enough production out of these guys. What's going to be the X factor? Because I think the game one X factor, huge one, was Obi Toppin. Yeah. And if you looked at some of the passes he was making tonight, some of the decision making that the OKC defense, in my opinion, forced them to make, right? It was that amoeba man defense that looks like a zone, but it's really man. They're swarming, they're diving, they're digging in. It forced Indiana to feel sped up. And they like to play fast, but at their rate. So I'm looking at the Indiana side. Who's going to be your X factor to kind of clean this up as they're trying to go to go to Indiana and take care of home court?
Yeah, I do think this is a Pascal series in the sense that he needs to be the determining factor for them offensively. Yes, of course, Haliburton is the engine that makes them go. But tonight, 3 of 11. There was this clip. I don't know if you saw it, but there was this clip of him and Haliburton talking at some point in the first half. And he's like, hey, keep sealing. I got you. And he's like, man, I'm trying,
Yeah.
And that goes to show you the effectiveness of OKC's defense, especially in the post, where they're making life hard on Pascal as soon as he catches the ball. I think part of that is how they're able to disguise their actions. The Pacers, at least, disguise their actions to get Siakam going a little bit more off of movement. The other thing is he has to just confidently shoot the ball. I thought there were a couple times in this game where he felt a little timid, and that is credit to OKC's defense. But if he is able to put pressure on OKC with his scoring, it just opens up more options for them, especially if he can get in the paint, create a mismatch, and then open up wide open shots for them. That's the guy, I think, moving into game 3 and how they do this. I also, I'm going to give you a little bit of a bold prediction, Zena. I think we come out of game 4 and it's 2-2. How do you feel about that? You think Indiana can get one at home? I feel like that's a pretty good,
Yeah, I absolutely think they're capable. I mean, after game 1, I think they're capable. I originally said OKC in 5. And I think game 1 definitely made me go, okay. I knew every game was going to be close. Right. Obviously, this one was not. OKC had to get their lick back. They gave up a game at home. But
we've seen them do this, though.
We've seen them do this.
Right. Yeah. They
exactly.
respond well.
So Indiana's definitely very capable of it. Now, before we let Dave and Andrew report from actually being inside the building, I got to ask you, we all saw those trophies on that court. And I'm just going to go ahead and put my complaint in. Everyone's been getting their complaints off on the social media sites. This is crazy, y'all. You want folks to tune in. You want folks to feel like there's a gold standard to your championship league, NBA. What are you doing? Because first and foremost, those trophies are digitally imprinted onto the court, which means that the switch out to add the finals script later on. Great. Appreciate it. Could have been done before. You could have tested the two out. The fact that you had them available, I feel as if this feels like a lackluster. They talk about everyone wanting to understand and respect the final story. These are 2 great basketball teams. This is going to be the best basketball ever played. But I feel like NBA, are you respecting it in the same way by not doing this?
Yeah, look, we covered the play-in tournament and the NBA Cup thoroughly, very, very thoroughly. We talked about the court designs. We talked about how often, they really designed those courts to some people not necessarily even enjoying those courts, right?
Right.
Why not do that for the biggest series of your league, of the NBA Finals? Right.
Correct.
Just lean into it. If it is about players slipping, then that also applies to the NBA Cup and the jerseys and the courts that we see there. So why not just lean into it for the NBA Finals? I think the actual finals script was better than the little emoji Larry O'Brien trophies that they had out there.
That's exactly what it was.
That was crazy.
They were emojis. They
look like emojis. They look, you might as well throw crying emojis on that. Just to see how people would think. I agree with you. I agree that was silly. I think they could have tested out a couple of different options here. If you go and look at old finals games from the early 2000s and they have that big Larry O'Brien trophy behind the logo, they could do that digitally.
Exactly.
The world is your oyster.
Correct. The creativity is there, especially because we know that the NBA wants to make people feel immersed into this experience. Yeah. There were so many different ways that they could play. And guess what?
Presentation is everything. Mm-hmm.
Correct. The series isn't over. So again, I'm hoping that NBA officials are the same people that we told at the top of this show to like and subscribe and are listening and giving us 5 stars. I will take a lower star if you are going to change the court, NBA. I will.
I'm just saying, I tweeted in the middle of the first half and I said, look, they could have just put the finals logos on there, and they did it, Zena.
They did.
So I'm just saying.
They're listening.
I'm just saying.
Go. Clock it.
We got ideas here on the NBA Daily, folks. I'm just letting you guys know.
You literally spoke it into existence. Okay, now we got to flop over to the folks that were actually there that didn't get to see these in person, but they got to see a lot of the action. Dave and Andrew, take us into the game at OKC.
Hey, it's Dave DuFour and Andrew Schlecht here in Oklahoma City, live post-game game 2. Andrew, the Thunder blow out the Pacers, which is what they kind of do after they lose a game. This was more like what we expected out of the Thunder.
Yeah, there's no question. This one didn't start, though, like a game that I thought OKC would blow them out. The Pacers were hanging around. They kind of had the game in the mud a little bit early, and the Thunder just could not find their footing. And it really wasn't until the Thunder went to lineups with Jalen Williams leading them, and then they actually went double big in this one.
With about 3:50 left in the first quarter, and I was tracking this because I wanted to see just what it looked like when they were double big. They finished that first rotation with Hartenstein and Chet +1, but what I saw was it opened up Chet to stretch the floor, and he had a couple big shots. Much better game than game one. I mean, really the difference was Chet had a great game for Chet, and then you get that contribution off the bench from Caruso and Wiggins, and they were able to just maintain a big lead for the rest of the game. They withstood a 10-0 run from the Pacers, and it's it started to get a little tight in here. I mean, I think that I can't be the only one that, even with a 20-point lead in the fourth quarter, thought there was some chance that Haliburton and the Pacers were going to pull it off.
Yeah, the entire game felt like a 2-point game for OKC. Yeah. The crowd, it felt like that until we saw Johnny Furphy's face on the court. It felt like anything can happen, because we've seen 16-point leads evaporate in a matter of seconds. And so this Pacers team, they just hang around, and they were hanging around for a lot of this game, and the Thunder just kind of kept punching back over and over again. And you have to look at Aaron Wiggins, and Kenrich Williams is going to be overlooked by almost everybody because Aaron Wiggins had the big scoring night. He played great. He was cooking people off the dribble. But Kenrich Williams came in and played really, really well. I think they were a +15 on the scoreboard with him in the game, and he just brought an aggression that the Thunder needed that they didn't really have game one. He allows them to go small. He actually allows them to play big too, because he played next to Chet at the 4, and you're talking about a guy that's 6'6", but he plays bigger than 6'6", and so he just allows them a different look than what they were giving in game one.
And it actually worked really, really well for the Thunder, because what the Pacers like to do is they like to wear you down, they like to wear you out. This is how they manufacture these comebacks, and then the Thunder had that extra energy late in the game. Part of that is, again, when your bench contributes in the way that the Thunder bench did tonight. I mean, Wiggins and Caruso, 9 threes, 38 points. That's a game that you most likely going to win, but with that sort of energy, I feel like it just carried him through the fourth. And you mentioned Furphy coming in. Pacers pulling their starters with 2.5 minutes left, and I'm thinking to myself, are you sure it's over?
I know, that's how it felt to me. It felt really strange. Another point of emphasis was very clearly, do not let Obi Toppin shoot threes.
Right.
He had 1 and 2 defenders flying at him anytime he was out there. And so he really didn't get many clean looks tonight.
Looked uncomfortable, actually. Yeah. With the ball pressure. Again, the Thunder did a really good job pressuring the bigs, especially Miles Turner, fumbled a ball out of bounds. I mean, it just seemed like they had butterfingers all night. Now, they didn't have the major turnovers. I mean, 15 turnovers for the Pacers in the game. It wasn't like game one, but those guys still look uncomfortable putting the ball on the floor, and I thought the Thunder did a really good job of making sure the ball found them.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the Thunder also just converted in the paint.
Yeah.
Simple as that. They made layups.
Big difference from game one.
I think they were 40% on layups in game one, and then they were closer to 60% on layups in game two.
Yeah, I want to talk about Tyrese Haliburton a little bit before we get to the Thunder side of this, because this is one of the reasons why I think that overrated label attached itself to Tyrese Haliburton. Sure. A game like this, he has that big game winner, which game one, he was not great. Okay, it was not an amazing Haliburton game, but then he comes back in game two, and he only takes 7 shots through the first 3 quarters, and then he goes 5 of 6 in the fourth. I mean, he was on fire in the fourth, and again, this is why I thought, are you sure they're not going to come back? But, that sort of, I don't want to call it passivity, because part of it is the way the Thunder attacked him. Lou Dort bodied him up all night. Yep. And Lou Dort really deserves more credit than he's going to get if you just beat the box score. He took 3 shots in the game, but his defense on Haliburton had just gotten to his head.
Yeah, it's a point of emphasis for them to try to really shut him down. And if you can, the thing about him is he needs a little bit of space to get off a shot. Right. He's not like most scorers. He's not like an Anthony Edwards who's going to get his shots for a game, or even Shai. Yeah. Shai's going to get his shots. Right. No matter who's defending him, no matter what's happening on the court, he's going to get his shots. Haliburton's a little bit different. He just affects the game in a different way too. And Jalen Williams was talking about it at post game that he's going to affect the game when he's out there. He's going to affect it with his passing, with his movement. I mean, a lot of times they'll put him in the corner. You have to pay attention to him. He's always going to have some attention. And so whether or not he's affecting the game via the box score, he's going to affect the game for the Pacers.
And with Haliburton, we saw him post-game, a little limp. in his step post game. Everybody by now has probably seen the video. He's kind of slowly walking out of the gym. So that's something to watch for game 3. Want to swing it to Shai, puts up 34 points. It's 72 points in his first 2 NBA Finals games. It's the most since Allen Iverson, which, pretty good comp. This guy's getting comp to legends every single game, it feels like. But all of their offense, really, it just seemed like it came easily for him. He was able to split all these traps in the pick and roll, runway to the basket all night long for him.
Yeah, this was a typical Shai game.
Yeah.
It looked like it took him a game to calibrate a little bit on how to play against the Pacers. There was a lot of talk about how different the Pacers play.
Right.
And they look a lot like the Thunder in a lot of ways, the way that they swarm and then the way they play offensively. Yeah. But it's taken the Thunder a minute to figure out how to deal with them. And it even took them a minute tonight.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier. And so I do think that Shai looked more comfortable. J-Dub looked more comfortable against them. Chet was more aggressive.
Yep.
I felt like he was pressing a little bit at the beginning of this one.
He fumbled the ball, trying to make a move to the basket. But then he follows it up. He hits a couple big threes.
Yep.
He has that one nice drive, which was something that I brought up after game 1. I thought I would see more of that out of him against the Pacers because there are opportunities there. Miles Turner is a pretty good defender on the perimeter.
Yep.
But you think that Chet's ability to put the ball on the floor when the Pacers are in rotation, he would just get more shot attempts driving to the basket, or at least to be able to kick out to an open 3. But we saw a little bit of that tonight. I still think there's more on, a little bit more meat on that bone for him in this series. But I think this is a confidence builder night for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think it takes time. I also think the Thunder, with long layoffs, they've not been very good.
Right.
And so I think that they're just better when they can play more basketball. Right. And so I think that they're settling into this series. It's 1-1 heading back to Indianapolis, and who knows what's going to happen from here.
Look, the nice thing about having a big lead going into the fourth is that your fourth quarter execution is not really going to be put to test.
Yeah,
much,
true.
Right? You're closing the game with Jalen Williams.
Yeah,
that's a pretty nice seat.
The other one, who got a standing ovation, by the way. First time he's played minutes in this series, and the crowd loved it.
I mean, the guys who are getting finals minutes is actually kind of cool. Like, again, Johnny Furphy plays in an NBA finals game, right? It takes a blowout to get him in, but, it happens. What about the vibe in the arena? Like, did you feel like the crowd was more nervous tonight than they were during the comeback in game 1?
Definitely.
Yeah.
The nerves from the beginning, and they used it to kind of fuel them more than it was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here? Right. It was more of, we are going to be the sixth man tonight for you. Like, we are going to be so loud. It was probably the loudest I've heard it.
And there's a huge tornado warning, and there's a giant storm happening outside of the building, and I had no idea. I mean, this is, again, one of the loudest arenas I've ever been in. And you wouldn't know that there's
these
the
are Oklahomans,
outside.
man. Who's scared is like the media members who are like grabbing me in the hallway, like, hey, how bad is this? How bad is this storm?
Well,
and us Oklahomans are like, listen, we'll be fine.
Every stairwell in this arena says it's a shelter. Situation. If in a case of emergency, hit the stairwell. So if you're ever in OKC, any other things from game 2 on your mind?
I think it's all about getting in the paint for both these teams.
Both of them.
Like, it's just about, can you get into the paint and then make a good decision?
Yep.
Chet talked about how they were able to get into the paint and kind of slow down. He said in the first game that it felt like they were kind of pressing a little bit as they were getting into the paint, and they missed so many layups and so many shots in the paint. So I think that the fact that they knew to get there and then to spray out, which helped a lot, and to get there and also take these mid-range shots that are there for you. Right. We saw that with Grayson Wallace, who's a guy who didn't play well in game 1, looked a lot better in game 2. He's able to convert on a shot right at the beginning of the game and then converted on shots right in the paint. And so I do think that is probably one of the biggest things. And for the Pacers too, the Pacers have got to figure out ways to get paint touches for themselves.
Haliburton took 2 shots in the paint in this game. Just, again, I don't want to call it passivity because that takes away the credit from the Thunder defense, who's just making them work for everything. Swinging it to game 3, it's going to Indy. In my gut, this feels like a series that's going to come back here 2-2, game 5. Do you feel like that? Or because I think it's closer than we would willing to admit coming into it.
Yeah, I do think this is clearly them getting game 1.
Right. Huge.
Is huge. Yeah. And oftentimes in series like this, it's hard to win 2 games on the road.
Right.
I do think this is a we're going to get a pivotal Game 5. That's what I think that we're going to get. I think that is where this series is heading, and then this series will really be decided. Like, can the Thunder actually win 2 games in a row and get Game 6 in Indianapolis? Yeah. So we'll see. I do think the Thunder have the upper hand. They've played better for a vast majority of these 2 games. Yeah. And it's, can they carry that over into Indy? If they can't, I think the Thunder have the capability of getting 2 there. Sure. But more than likely, they're going to get one of these 2. We'll be back here for Game 5, and the Thunder will be trying to turn this in their favor.
The big thing that the Pacers have to do is they have to run the Thunder off the three-point line. And I know that's a funny thing to say because we talked about how they've struggled to shoot, but the one thing that the Pacers have to win at is they have to make more threes than the Thunder. That is going to be their game. They've got to win the math problem there. They're probably not going to win the possession battle, although tonight, same number of shots for both teams. But plus 10 and make free throws for the Thunder, which, that's huge in a game like this. So, look, again, Game 3 adjustment for the Pacers, you got to make shots. But you got to be able to take them. These guys look like they were just blanketed all over. I don't know how they're going to free guys up with the way that the Thunder are playing.
Yeah, the Thunder defense looked like itself tonight. Yeah. And especially if there's something about him that's not right, which there's a lot of things about these guys that aren't right at this point in the season. But if he's not right, and he can't get right for these 2 games, look for the Thunder to take advantage of that.
Absolutely, and even more ball pressure when he touches the ball. Yeah. That takes us to our BetMGM pick of the night. We're looking ahead to Game 3 in Indy. No weird weather outside, probably. I don't know. I think these guys are going to get their direct flight and not have to stop in Tulsa. Are you taking the Thunder in Game 3, or do you think Indy gets to swing this back because they go home?
I'll take the Thunder in Game 3.
Yeah. Feels like that to me. I'm going to take the Thunder in Game 3, and then Game 4, I do think the Pacers will pick it back up. It's, again, hard to win 2 in a row on the road.
It's really difficult.
Yeah. Guys, that's going to do it for the show. Thanks to Zena, Keita, and Baraheni back home. Andrew Schlecht, the mayor of Oklahoma City, by the way, the podfather. Everyone was so nice to us while we were here, and it's thanks to this guy. Also, shout out to Amy. Get well soon. Guys, thanks for waking up with us.